And welcome back to the Drink It podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Zach Samey from Roastful, and I've got my co-host Ray Murakawa.
What's up?
On the Drink It podcast, we talk about all things coffee news, coffee hot topics, and controversial coffee things. We wanted to get it started with our "Get It Off Your Chest" segment. Get it off your chest.
What is it?
I'll tell you what, Ray. Because we've got a great guest from Japan coming on the podcast in just a bit, I would love to talk about my recent experience in Japan.
Here we go.
I'm gonna lay something on you right here.
All right. Let me hear it.
I believe that Tokyo is the best coffee city in the world.
Yo. Come on, man.
It is.
Come on, man. Look. We just had Lance. We just had Say on the show. Jimmy Dub might be listening. I know you know April. You know what I'm saying? Like Patrick might be listening. Like you're gonna come out and say the whole country.
Let me clarify. I'm not saying that those guys are not great too. What I'm saying is, I have never been to a place that I went to as many great coffee shops in one city as I had been in Tokyo. It felt like every place I went into. Now, obviously, there's some coffee shops that maybe are not our preference, and maybe some coffee shops that are not great. But of the specialty coffee shops that I went into, it felt like every single one of them was at least serving me a pretty good cup of coffee.
Don't buffer that. You pretty good?
To an amazing
great.
cup. I'm saying at least baseline a pretty good cup of coffee to an amazing cup of coffee. I will be on the record saying that Cafe Mamiya, both locations are
Kakeru and all that.
They're phenomenal. Both of them are. They've got some champions up in there, up in their Kakaru joint, and then they've got another champion. They've got a Brewers Cup champion in their other location. At least when I went, he was there, and so they are crushing it, absolutely crushing it.
So in what aspect? Like hospitality, extraction,
it's everything.
Green quality, like all of it.
It's everything. They have. It's great hospitality pretty much everywhere. I don't really think I had a bad hospitality. I remember one place that I went to that there was a lot of tourists going in there, and I don't blame the person for seeming maybe a little bit frustrated, just to be honest. That's the only memory I have of anything that was anywhere close to bad customer service, and I don't think even then it was bad. Amazing hospitality. They really, really do want to provide great hospitality and great customer service to you. Just brew quality, like everything. Even the stuff that maybe wasn't my preference when it came to like roast degree and roast style, those things, brew quality, it was still top notch. It was the best coffee city that I've been to, but I believe it's the best coffee city in the world.
Whoo! And you haven't even been out there, really.
And I was only there for a little bit.
Bro.
Yeah, I was only there for a little bit. It doesn't matter. I went to a lot of coffee shops. I did go to a lot of coffee shops.
Yeah.
But there were still some that I want to go back and visit. There were still some that I know I missed, and for that reason, I'm going to go back.
Tell me one thing, man. Like their medium quality, their baseline,
sure,
or I guess their medium, is our what?
I would say their baseline of a specialty coffee shop. Obviously, there's other specialty coffee shops that are not great, but I would say by and large, their baseline seems to be a pretty good coffee shop here. Like it's like you think about like that one coffee shop in your city that's like, hey, that's a like pretty good coffee shop. I'd recommend people go in there.
Yeah.
You know, I would stop by and have no problem buying a coffee there, and I would enjoy it. Like that is their baseline, and everything goes up from there. It was just everything was their baseline was.
Damn.
Their baseline was starting at pretty good and going up to excellent.
Wow. So what were the top three, man?
Oh, you're gonna do me like that?
You have to, man. You can't come out and say the whole
both,
whole country is crazy and not give me 3, man.
Both Café Mameas, both of them,
because it's the same company.
both of them.
Okay.
They operate differently. I consider them different
Just
things.
left an impression.
They're both phenomenal. Acid was awesome. Acid was awesome.
Shout out to Acid, man.
Acid was really great. And if you want me to give you a 4th, I'll give you a 4th.
I can guess who it is. But you ain't got a show like that, though. But who is it? Yo, there was that many, though, that you kind of forget. You get lost in the greatness. Everything's tasting so fly. You can't even remember. Because I can tell you how many great cafes I've had in LA, and that shit is like real easy, man, to drop like the top 3, man.
Well, that's the thing, is there was a few that were really, really great.
Man.
And there was one coffee shop that's leaving my mind right now, and I'm gonna kick myself later for not mentioning them. I know also that Mame out there, Kudo Mame, is really good as well. I did have a really good experience there as well. But there's one other coffee shop that is I am just blanking on who it is right now. That also was phenomenal. Also did a really, really great job.
Sure, man.
But there's a ton of other ones. There's a bunch of others that I didn't have a chance to go to, and I am planning on going back and visiting those coffee shops. So, what do you think about that hot topic, Ray? What do you think about that? Yeah,
Japan being the big. Like, I haven't even been to enough countries recently to even compare.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard from friends, you included, that the impression is just very positive across the board.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of where they went to, there's something of a unique experience in every shop. Like, they seem to carry themselves very personally and showcase a level of character and personality that goes beyond just like, hey, let's make money. This is a transaction because you need caffeine. It's more of like, look at this. This is my ideology of what great coffee service and beverage is. You feel that resonate. Like, at least when I was in Japan, because I didn't even go to any of the newer guys. Like, I went to, what is that one place in Nakameguro? I forget. Fuglen and so on and so forth, and Glitch and all that. Like, these places, like, when you step in, it's like they have their own character and personality, and like you feel like you see the owner through just entering their shop. What they really deem is important to have a great, relaxing, nice time. And it's not just all about the vibe, because typically the coffee that they had, I don't think I could have brewed it better. Because a lot of times, it's like,
totally.
I'm not really, a fan of every type of roast style that I've tasted, but the way that they do their own coffee, you can tell is straight up from fucking roaster to cup. Like, they're controlling all the variables based on what they're going to offer the customer at the end. You know what I mean? Like, they're roasting to a degree where they say, well, I'm doing a 1 to 15 at this coarseness, and I'm going to have it at this temperature. So I'm going to drop the coffee now, and serve it in X amount of days and do this and this and that, X, Y, Z. So when I give it to that person, they're going to taste exactly this. Because typically, like, you were talking about micro roasters, the people who are roasting it are behind the bar, man. They might not be serving you, but you see that person. And so it's like, when the person who's that close and intimate to the green buying, to the roasting, to the sorting, to the selections, and then down to training the staff and maybe even brewing it for you, that is as close as you could get to someone's actual, like, auteur, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, they're really distinct perception of like what a great cup is, in their environment. Like, they chose the plants, they chose the curtain. They're like, yo, this is what I imagine when I'm serving this cup of coffee to this person. Japan does that with everything. And I'm not just talking shit because I haven't been to that many cafes in Japan, but I've been to so many establishments that serve great hospitality, food, wine, beverage. and they all have that kind of standard of
Totally.
giving you a part of their own heart. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. It's like
Different.
yeah, it really is. And speaking of that, even what you're talking about there, when I say Tokyo is the best coffee city in the world, it's not even throwing shade on Kyoto and Osaka. You know, it's not even throwing shade on those guys or any other Japanese city. It's more so there's just so many great coffee shops in Tokyo, but I think there are some amazing coffee shops in Kyoto and Osaka. And we've got a guest who's coming on from a coffee shop in Kyoto. It's Masa from Weekenders, and we're super excited about that. And when you were talking about even that, Masa is the owner of Weekenders. He's involved in the roasting process. He's involved in the cafe, and he was the guy who pulled, my espresso shot. He was the guy who brewed me my pour over, And so you're right. There's a level of intentionality there that these business owners take and a lot of pride in, and it's really, really wonderful. Ray, let's move into our next segment. We have a news segment we want to talk on that is also related to Japan, but it's a little bit different. We're gonna move from coffee to matcha.
Yo, the other coffee, man.
The other coffee, the green kind, but not green coffee.
Kind.
But
and
not,
the other coffee
but not an ultralight roast.
No. I mean, it depends on how you want to categorize, man, because they got some matchas that are just kind of, blander in color, you know what I'm saying? But the thing about matcha, everyone has heard about matcha crisis, matcha shortage, and everything. And I think it's perfect to kind of touch on this because we are at an all-time low in terms of obtaining this green powder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's a phenomenon that's kind of like snowballed since 2024.
Yeah.
When we first hear about this crisis, this shortage with certain large exporters kind of having purchasing caps and limits to how much their partners can actually purchase now, how much they actually exporting, not just because of some kind of weird stingy thing, but Japan is, if is a tiny place, man. And the place where they grow like actual like matcha is very, very small. It's not built for the world, I should say. It's built for like these communities, localities, and kind of serving high quality things to Japan only. And after this huge influx of matcha interest in the US, because we are essentially like the largest consumers of high quality matcha. Like we're almost at like certain sources say 30%, certain sources say 80% of all the export of matcha goes out to us.
Wow.
The land of SB, you know what I'm saying? And so like when you start putting this specialty item, which can only be picked once a year on a specific range of months between April and May, and takes X amount of hours to, just produce 130-gram tin can, hand selected, hand processed, roasted, sorted, all of that. And you plug it into the U.S., the veracity of U.S. consumerism. Like we are the most monster consuming country in the world. Once it hits go time, once you go viral with any product in the U.S., you have to serve volume, regardless of what your thing costs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
When the Americans want it, like we don't stop. Okay? Like it's gotten to a certain point now where in Japan, they have this thing called, they call it matcha tourism, because there was a point this year, where foreigners would pre-buy a bunch of matcha, have it held at these traditional sellers. They go to Japan with like two empty suitcases and just bring home and hoard out tons of ceremonial grade, high quality matchas. To a point where it's like, okay, they started, putting limits on how much people could buy. And then, prices out here started inflating to a point, dude. Like you can do a Google search and put in bootleg matcha. All right. And you will see people complaining about funky brown sticks and shit like cut into their, supposedly ceremonial grade matcha.
Yeah.
And you're finding bootleg. Look, when we have scarcity out in the U.S., people get fucking belligerent. Like they start behaving like ferocious animals, bro. And that's kind of the point we're at right now, where cafes we are sold out of matcha. You know what I mean? Like prices are going nuts. Like you got $7, 5-ounce lattes, and everything is kind of at a point where a lot of high-end matcha shops out in the US, big cities, are starting to push these kind of lesser grade or lesser known regions, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But they're not built for volume either.
Well,
you know
that's
what I mean?
the thing, right?
It is not helping the problem, bro.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
that's the thing.
it's insane. When you watch videos on like how matcha is processed, it's basically they're still using, stone grinding, because they know that at a certain RPM and at that kind of coarseness, that type of grind profile, if you will, it generates the least amount of heat and retains the highest amount of VOCs and nuance from the plant as possible. You can't speed that up. We can't be out here like Folgers throwing in 65 tons in a freaking roller mill and going freaking, you know what I'm saying? Like Mad Max on the shit. Like it has to be done in a specific way in order to qualify itself as being high tier. And because of that, we're seeing the bootleg game. We're seeing, this Ippodo stuff packaged with a freaking, with like one less letter in the title. Like we got weird, you know what I'm saying? Like we're in the US, man. It's like, we all know that we have a white powder crisis, man. But now it's like the green powder season, dude. Like we got a green powder's crisis in the US. It's like that wild out here. And it might sound like I'm overreacting, but if you look at like the year-over-year demand of matcha, it's growing like exponentially. It is not stopping. And the exporters from Japan are telling people like, we have no more. You know what I'm saying? Like we can even cut this with some whack twig, but we running out of twigs, bro. Like we don't even have anything to give you. So the reason why I'm talking about all this is because in specialty, we always talk about the scarcity of great coffees, the scarcity of coffee, production in general as a whole. And what I found out reading all this funky stuff about matcha is that they also have a labor shortage where they have the highest median age of agricultural labor in Japan because no one wants to do matcha work. You know what I'm saying? It is just not, it's not as, hype as whatever, you know what I mean? Like other kind of jobs, like people aren't taking these jobs. So not only do they have a shortage of land and, labor and high demand and everything kind of crashing into this phenomenon, we're seeing the coffee crisis happen in real time within the past 2-3 years. Like what's coffee going to be like when we start fucking, having to put this Finca Deborah in a scanner to make sure that they ain't no like Honduran shit up in there. You know what I'm saying? Like we might get to an age like that because that's kind of where matcha's going, dude.
Well, I feel like we kind of have gotten a little bit with the co-ferment crisis. It feels like from the past few years. Not really sure what people are putting in the co-fermented coffee sometimes, whether it's actual fruit, whether it's artificial flavoring. You know what? There is a little bit of truth to it. There is at least a little bit of truth to it. But what you're saying is not something crazy, Ray. And if the listener thinks it is, we'll link to the show notes. We always have we try to have a news article to go along with this segment, and so we'll link to the show notes a New York Times article discussing this matcha shortage. It is really, really fascinating because I feel like I really noticed matcha have a moment back in like 2019. It felt like, and it was really, really big. But it feels like it had another moment. Like it feels like it just boomed again. Like really, I don't know if it was random. I don't know what it was, but it really does seem like matcha has just taken off again, even though people are already aware of it. It's just like more and more people have started drinking it as like a second big jump in the consumption.
And so coffee now, man.
It will be, what's that?
It's definitely the other coffee right now.
It is the other coffee. I mean, here in the U.S., now it's different in Japan. In Japan, you have dedicated coffee shops and dedicated matcha shops or tea shops. You have, you don't really have a lot of that crossover. There's, I'm sure, some in certain places, but you don't necessarily in every coffee shop they don't always serve matcha. In fact, I would say more often now they don't serve matcha in coffee shops. Here in the US, we package it as the same thing, right? We package it as here's your coffee shop and you can get your matcha here too. And I think that's why it's been, in part, here in the US at least, why we started to see that boom as an alternative to a coffee based latte. We've seen the boom in matcha based lattes. So it is really interesting. We will keep an eye out and see if how this trend continues and if the production can keep up with the consumption. It'll be really fascinating to see how the market adjusts to that. But Ray, I think it's time to introduce our guest on the show for today. We've got Masa from Weekenders, and we are so stoked because you know how much I love Weekenders, Ray. Probably my favorite roaster in Japan. They just roast amazing quality coffee, really great green coffees that I love, just really clean, very just feels like the coffees that I really fell in love with when I got into coffee, and roasting in a way that is really light but always very balanced.
So I first heard of Weekenders from you, Zach, and you told me, I asked you, I was like, you know, what do you think is the best roaster in Japan? And you told me that, well, there's a lot of roasters out in Japan because it's just very rich with history. And specialty coffee has just been such a huge thing in Japan for such a long time. Depends on the region, whatever. But out of the ones that you've tried, told me, you've always told me, you said Weekenders is by far your favorite roaster in Japan. But not only just in Japan, but in terms of the world. Like you have a huge list of roasters that you love.
Yeah.
Outside of the U.S., even in the U.S., but they're kind of in your top 10? Is that right? Is it still like that?
I can't say I disclose my top 10, but what I would say is I would definitely say Weekenders is one of my favorite roasters in Japan, if not my favorite roaster.
Yeah, and definitely outside of Japan, they're very, very much recognized as a top roaster, a top international roaster that competes with anything else on the global market. When you do espresso aficionados searches on where to visit Japan, or even the dreaded Reddit, people always recommend, there's about 5 roasters that they say you have to go to in Japan, but Weekenders is always on that list.
Totally.
So it's an honor to have Masa on the podcast. And
absolutely.
Yeah, let's just get to know a little about their background, their history, what's going on with them.
Yeah.
In the beginning and what's going on with them now.
And so our next guest is someone that we respect so much in the coffee industry. It's a roastery that I fell in love with probably back in 2019, 2020. And we were able to feature them in a Roastful Box, the first ever Japanese roaster that we featured in a Roastful Box. And I can confidently say they are one of, if not my favorite, Japanese roasters. We've got Masa from Weekenders on the podcast, and we are so grateful for that. So Masa, thank you for being here. Yeah. So that leads us to our first question. Masa, how did you get started in the industry? How did you start Weekenders? How did this whole thing come about? Tell us about that.
僕たち夫婦で2005年にウィーケンダーズをスタートしたんですけど、その前はずっとカフェで働いてて、で、その時はもう本当にエスプレッソが好きで、でもまだ日本のコーヒーシーンっていうか、そのカフェでも本当に本格的なエスプレッソっていうのはまだまだ少なくて、それを広めたいなっていうのがまず一つのきっかけです。
So he started in about 2005 with his wife, and he was working shops, and he really loves espresso. And that's something that was kind of hard to find in Japan, especially like traditional or what he believes is great espresso was not easy to come by. So that was one of the first kind of reasons for him to start up his own business.
Wow. And I had some really great espresso there when I was in Kyoto from Masa. He pulled me a really great shot, actually. Did Masa, did you have any experience like prior to, like you have this love for espresso and you wanted to be able to share that with your community? Did you have experience in coffee prior to that, or how did this love for espresso come about?
その大学時代に アルバイトで、そのカフェで働いてたんですけど、その時にエスプレッソマシンがあって、でも本当に、なんていうのか、働いたカフェっていうのは、フランスのカフェの店舗やったので、そんなプロフェッショナルな感じじゃなかったです。でも本当に自分がオープンした時にマシンを、オープンの前の1週間前ぐらいに届いて、そこから自分で試行錯誤しながらやってきました。
So it was during his college days. He was working at a cafe that was kind of French based, and they had once he started about a week after they got their first espresso machine, and that's kind of where his journey began. He started to research and put time in on the espresso machine, and basically that kind of fueled the whole flame of his love for espresso.
Yeah. Wow. I'm curious. This cafe that was a little bit more French based. Traditionally we're thinking about some French coffee and maybe how this would have been served. We could probably assume that these coffees would have been probably a little bit dark, and even traditionally in Japan, some coffees have been traditionally served a little bit dark. But Masa loves espresso, and then also loves to serve coffee that's really light espresso. How did this happen? Like where did this come from? Like what came for this love for lightly roasted coffee?
最初、うちのカフェをスタートした時はまだ焙煎もしてなくて、で、最初は、カフェロッソっていう島根のコーヒー屋さんがあるんですけど、そこの、オーナーは、WBC のシアトル大会、2005年かな。その時に、2位になってるんですよ。その人のエスプレッソを飲んで、僕は衝撃を受けて、もっとエスプレッソを極めていこうと思ったんですけど、その時はまだダークロースト。
Cafe Rosso, and the owner was a WBC champion, like in 2005.
2位です。セカンドプレイス。
2位. Second place. And, he wasn't roasting at that time, but they were pulling dark roast shots. And once he tasted his espresso, that kind of took him there. That was his God shot, an entry into wanting to pursue espresso specifically.
Ray, he had tasted the WBC second place shot. That was his God shot, or
僕がカフェをオープンするときにカフェロスの豆を使いたいなっていう思いがあって、で、実際その島根まで飲みに行って、その頃っていうのは本当に、リストレット。彼はポール・バセットとか、あとデビッド・ショマーとか、そういう影響を受けてるんで、めちゃめちゃ濃いコーヒーでした。
So actually he would go to Shimane and travel to this cafe that was pulling ristretto shots. And they were in the ilk of Paul Basset, or these older, I guess, traditional style goopy espressos.
Sure.
But that was something that was so good that he would actually travel to these cafes to get a taste of.
で、そういうカフェをやったんやけど、その中で、アメリカのインテリジェンシアとか、あとは、スクエアマイルで、ティム・ウェンデルボーとかのコーヒーを自分で、豆を買ってテイストしたときに、やっぱ自分たちがやってるエスプレッソと、フィルターコーヒーもそうやけど、全然テイストが違くて、で、やっぱ自分でもそのライトローストのコーヒーをやりたいなっていう思いがあって、で、焙煎を始めました。それが2011年。
So about 2011, he started buying his own beans. So notably like Tim Wendelbo, Intelligentsia. And the shots that he was getting out of that, or the coffee that he was experiencing, was something completely different from the coffee he was used to, which was darker. So after kind of experimenting in brewing and pulling shots from these lighter roasters at that time, that kind of awakened his interest or his passion for this lighter roast profile. でその時から焙煎を始めたんですか？
途中から
About 2011, he started roasting.
Wow. So Weekenders was a cafe, I guess, before roasting in 2011, I'm assuming, because he said it's 2005. Masa, I'm assuming 2005 is when you started, but then you started roasting in 2011?
Yeah, so he started Weekenders in 2005 and then started roasting in 2011.
That makes sense. Masa, thanks so much for sharing all about that. We are really interested in the Japanese coffee landscape. I had a chance to visit back in the summer. We got to chat and hang out for a minute, and it was just really inspiring for me because I was able to go to Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka and really go to some amazing cafes that I don't necessarily go to a place where I find that many really good coffee shops all in one area. And so we're really interested in in Japanese coffee shops and the Japanese cafe landscape, in part because of that, and for other reasons as well. And so we're just curious, when it comes to the Japanese coffee landscape, like when you first started, was the customer expectation at that time different than it is now? What were cafes also doing at that time that were maybe different in terms of like roasting and brewing? Can you share a little bit about how things have changed since when you started to where they're at now?
僕らがそのお店を始める近辺の時っていうのは、その、コーヒーショップっていうよりはカフェ。そのフードもあって、デザートもあって、で、こう、なんていうかな。家具とかもめちゃめちゃおしゃれで雰囲気が良くて、だからお客さんが求めてるっていうのは、その雰囲気の部分だったんですよね。その味とかじゃなくて。で、やっぱそういうのがメインやって、で、そこからそのコーヒーショップっていうのが、言ったらこう、おしゃれというかなんだな。メディアの力が大きいと思うんですけど、その頃はもうコーヒーショップっていうよりはカフェでしたね。で、なんだろうな。その当時やったらその、ドリップやったらドリップのお店みたいな。エスプレッソやったらエスプレッソマシンはあるけど、もう本当にアメリカーノみたいなのが多かったです。
So when he started, it was less of coffee shops and more, culture was more based around cafes. And a lot of the pull, a lot of the attraction was trendy furniture, really nice vibe, the interior, the ambiance, and something that looked modern and cool. So it was more of a hangout place rather than something that focused on coffee quality. This is something that was kind of based around media and around things that just were more of a virality thing rather than the quality side of coffee. So at least when he started, that was kind of the vibe. And
Sure.
It was less of a coffee shop type of thing. Shops either did just straight up drip or they did maybe straight up espresso, but the espresso was mostly like Americanos. Yeah. And they weren't really doing that much with the espresso side of things in terms of quality.
Okay. So I'm just curious, kind of a follow-up question on that. Like, what was some of the what was the catalyst for some of this shift? Because we do live in a day now where there's cafes and coffee shops that are focused on just the utmost quality, not just ambiance. There is certainly that as well, and there's certainly great ambiance at great coffee shops in Japan. And at the same time, there's really, really amazing quality that's being produced by these coffee shops. So what was the catalyst for the change in that?
2005年当時っていうのは、コーヒー、その焙煎するコーヒー屋さんもあったんやけど、その頃っていうのはまだやっぱ裏方の仕事、焙煎って別にかっこいい仕事ではなかったんですけど、それが、言ったら雑誌とかで、雑誌でサードウェーブ、いわゆるそのアメリカのコーヒーショップのシーンとかが紹介されるようになって、で、どんどんその若い世代がコーヒーにフォーカスするようになってきたんですよね。そうすると、そのカフェっていうよりは、コーヒーショップ、コーヒースタンドみたいなのができてきて、で、その後は次は焙煎の方になってきてる感じですかね。 そうすると、この質のいいコーヒーを手に入れるっていうのが若い世代に広がってきて、で、今の日本のコーヒーシーンができているのかなと思います。
So early on, roasting was seen as more of like a labor type of thing, and it definitely wasn't cool. Or, seen in a way where it's kind of like an interesting craft that other people want to get into. Like, it wasn't about that when he started. But slowly as the young people started to kind of get curious about the coffee scene, especially what we call third wave, there was a lot more media coverage on roasting and roasters. The focus kind of shifted a little towards roasting as something that was a little more specific and craft worthy and allowed cafes to set themselves apart. So it became kind of a cool thing because of this media coverage, magazines, and just kind of the whole buzz around third wave becoming a thing. So that shift towards roasting kind of enabled or led a lot of the scene to attract younger people and kind of reestablish the Japanese landscape or specialty coffee landscape into kind of this new era that's definitely like focused with roast quality
コーヒーだけ
and coffee quality in general.
最初はバリスタになりたい。みんなバリスタになりたいって言って、で、やっぱそれはラテアートから入ってるんですよね。綺麗なラテアートを描きたいっていうブームがあって、で、そうすると、焙煎も深くなる。綺麗なラテアート描くために焙煎が深かった。ですけど、そこからどんどんその浅煎りの文化っていうのが入ってきて、で、みんな逆に急に浅煎りに変わってきてるようなイメージです。
それはいつ頃ですか
？12年とかに、その雑誌で、なんていうか、ライトロースト、ノルディックローストがこうバーンって紹介されたんですよね。で、その時に、フグレンとかができてるし、そこからこう、急にみんなが、一般の人たちがライトローストを認めるようになってきたよ。それまではみんなライトローストはもう酸っぱいもんで、もう好きな人の方が少なかったです。当時も僕も、浅煎りをやってたんやけど、お客さんが求めるものっていうのは、酸っぱくないコーヒーはどれですかっていうのが多かったんですけど、そこをきっかけに、逆にこうみんな酸っぱいのはどれですかっていうふうに変わってきてる感じです。
So he said that there was a huge shift with all that media and all that kind of attention that coffee culture was getting. A lot of younger folks wanted to become baristas. And that was like a huge thing that, didn't really exist before. Seeing these images of people like pulling shots and doing like cool stuff behind bar became really attractive. And I think that happened all around the world as well. But that message was definitely just as strong in Japan. And a lot of those people went in because they wanted to do latte art. Yeah. And so that was a huge thing. People pulling shots and like doing like wild designs. And latte art, like, at least in terms of competitions and everything, the darker your roast, the more contrast, more easy it is to get this contrasty type of art. And it was kind of a big thing. So dark roast was definitely, it had a space, and probably still does, in specialty in Japan. But around 2012, there was a magazine that came out that kind of showcased light roast. And it was about the time where Fuglin was out there and light roast kind of started to gain a little traction. The only problem was the general public will go into these cafes, even to weekenders, and say, hey, do you guys have coffee? Like, I like this light roast stuff, but do you guys have coffees that aren't sour? And that was a big thing. So he had to struggle with customers, wanting something different and being interested in this whole light roast movement, but they were still not educated in how to really taste what light roast had to offer. So that's something that was kind of a hump in the beginning, but then slowly the general tastes started to kind of realize, what light roast has to offer. And it's not just all sour coffees. There's a lot of beauty and acidity and so forth. So at this point, it's just kind of evolved into people getting it from the latte art thing, but and then getting into the light roast, and then finally being able to appreciate the world of this lighter roast profile.
Wow. Masa, you brought up something really interesting that Ray, maybe we can circle back to when it comes to even some generational things there. But one thing I'm just curious about now, we had maybe a time period where people didn't want, quote unquote, sour coffees. And now we're in 2025 and it's become a little bit more of the norm, right? You have a little bit more, you have a lot more cafes that are serving lightly roasted coffee, especially in Japan, and in Kyoto. What are people typically ordering nowadays? Are they open to these lightly roasted coffees? What do you see people ordering when they come into Weekenders? And also maybe just a follow-up question, like what percentage of those people do you see that are tourists that are ordering, some of these lightly roasted coffees versus maybe your local folks?
そのイメージで、酸っぱいのは嫌っていう人は、中にはもう本当に 10% ぐらいかな。でも普通に酸味のあるコーヒーですよっていう風なことを言わなければ、うちの店で提供すれば、抵抗なくコーヒーを飲んでもらえる、ライトローストを飲んでもらえるような形ですね。それで、うちのお店でコーヒーを飲んで、これ自分でも家でコーヒーを入れたいから豆を買っていくみたいな感じがすごい多いです。あとはコロナのパンデミックで、やっぱ家でコーヒーを飲む人の層がめちゃめちゃ広がって、年配の人って結構ライトローストを嫌ってたんですけど、今は年配の人でもライトローストを、それで、コーヒーを飲む機会が増えて、ライトローストに抵抗がなくなって、本当に、うちのラインナップでもライトローストを買っていく方が多いです。
Hold on. So he says that at this point, there's a lot of people who just order their coffees and enjoy it, and maybe only about 10% kind of have this off-putting moment, or
Sure,
a little it's a little disagreeing with that.
yeah,
But most of the people that come into his shop, they order all his coffees and enjoy it, and especially since the pandemic, because home brewing became such a huge phenomenon.
oh wow,
A lot of people were experimenting with light roast and Weekenders coffee as well, and just taking that home, experimenting, getting a kind of acclimated to the taste profile. So at this point, most of the people that come into his shop, they'll come in. He won't even say, hey, this is acidic coffee or this is bright or vibrant. He'll offer the coffee. They come in, they say, oh, this is great, and he said 90% of the people don't have any kind of aversion to it. And typically, like what would happen is, they'll enjoy the coffee, buy a retail bag, and take it back home and brew it.
oh, that's
So
awesome.
it's been something where he's been able to attract a bunch of people. They come in, they might have light roast for the first time, and
they like it.
He's seeing a lot of people just kind of attaching to that profile that Weekenders offers.
Wow. That brings up a really great question, actually. Even when it comes to one of the reasons, Masa, why we wanted to have you on the podcast too, is we're wanting to learn a little bit more about how people are consuming coffee in Japan right now, and we're curious. One of the things that made me really wonder about how many people are brewing at home is specifically when I was in Tokyo, a lot of coffee shops opened really late in the day. So part of my thought process was I was wondering, do people just brew at home very, very frequently? Whereas here in the US, coffee shops open early because people go in and get coffee really early. So do you have a lot of people that are brewing at home in your community? Like brewing at home with your coffee? And also, is that a part of why some coffee shops do open a little bit later?
日本人はやっぱどうしても外でコーヒーを朝飲むっていうのが、今は少ない。だから自分の家で朝起きてコーヒー入れる人と、あとは、コーヒーショップがやってないからっていうのもあるし、コンビニエンスストアの安いコーヒーをパッと飲む人が多い。それが一般的な話ですね。 いや、やっぱ缶コーヒーが日本はあるじゃないですか。缶コーヒーを飲む数っていうのは、その海外と比べると、海外の人はみんなコーヒーショップに行くけど、日本人はもうすぐ早く手に入るものを欲しがるのかなっていうのがあります。
なるほど。So he's saying there's a couple factors. Just basically behaviorally, like a lot of Japanese people, because they're in a rush to get to work, they'll wake up and brew their own coffee, whatever it is, pour over a machine, whatever they have at home. So that's kind of one set of people. They just want it done before they leave the house. But a lot of people, dipping into convenience stores. And we know how good and convenient convenience stores are in Japan.
Yes.
And we know the selection is insane out there. Like you have dozens and dozens of kankohi, basically canned coffee, hot, cold, everything. And if you're not near a convenience store, you're going to be near a machine, right? Like a vending machine. So there's always coffee in your face, you know, that you could get more convenient than stepping into a cafe. So that has a lot to do with why you're not seeing cafes open in the morning. Just the competition from convenience stores and vending machines is just so great. And it's so convenient to get like decent coffee out there that it's not in a lot of places, businesses' best interest to be open in the early morning, which is kind of an insane thing. That doesn't happen out here because we don't have vending machines for one.
No,
you know,
our convenience stores don't have high quality coffees.
Yeah, exactly.
One of our first conversations, Ray, that you and I had actually on the podcast a few years ago when we had you on back when we had the Roastful podcast. We talked about that, and that was a part of your story as well, Ray, when you would go to the bathhouses and get some of the canned coffees afterwards and stuff like that, right? That was a big part of your kind of even upbringing in coffee was being able to visit some of those places in Japan and get some of those just canned coffees or whatever that is in
日本人の
convenience
ピー
stores
クタイムっていうの
or
は
vending machines and things like
そ
that.
の
Yeah,
カフェ
for
に
sure.
カフェをするみたいな言葉があって、やっぱその午後2時とか3時ぐらいが日本人のピークじゃないですかね。その外でコーヒーを飲むっていうピークは。朝は家で行って、いやいや、若い世代でも、休みの日とかの2時、3時が多いと思います。うちは、やっぱで、朝は外国人が多い。その2時、3時ぐらいになると日本人とかが増えてくるような。観光客っていうか、やっぱ京都って、こう外国人の方来られても、やっぱ1週間、2週間とか長いスパンで、こう、ステイして、だからもう毎日通ってくれるような感じなんですよね。だから観光客っていう捉え方っていうよりは、やっぱその1週間、2週間っていうのをヘビーカスタマーな感じで、うちはそれがいい感じで回ってるのかなって思います。
So he's saying that in Japan, there's a custom of let's do cafe or let's do coffee. And that's usually 2 to 3 p.m. And that's for young people. That's for people working or whatever it is. It's kind of their fika, I guess.
Okay.
So that's a very common thing. A lot of cafes experience the most traffic, the most coffee consumption around kind of those later afternoon hours.
Wow.
And so for them, especially because they're in Kyoto, where there's a lot of people visiting and staying for weeks, whether they be out-of-towners or tourists, they become their temporary like home cafe. Like that's their local cafe. Weekenders becomes their local spot. So these people who are visiting or staying, around Kyoto area for spans of, days and weeks, they just frequent in the morning. And a lot of the out-of-towners, they have this kind of, we have a behavior of just waking up at 6 a.m, just heading to the first cafe, right?
Right.
So a lot of Westerners, a lot of people from out of town, they kind of rely on weekenders as their local spot to just be open for service.
Yeah.
So they're out there, they experience a bump in the morning with either foreigners, out of towners, tourists, and they get that other Japanese peak at 2 to 3. So if you want to hang out with Japanese people in the cafe, you don't go in the morning.
You go at 2 or 3.
Like you wait,
That's
you
funny.
wait later in the day about 2, 3 o'clock Go up in there, it'll be more quiet, more chill, you know, less
That's so
screaming,
funny.
less yelling, you know what I mean? Probably be
That's
more
so funny
more of a local thing.
because we I mean, I worked in coffee shops that closed at 3 o'clock, right? You know, and then some coffee shops that I worked at that if we didn't close at 3, we were dead at 3. You know, so it's just interesting how the different, you know, time or how the different areas are when it comes to that stuff.
メルボルンとか行っても、メルボルン、それがすごい衝撃。もう朝の早くからいて、でもう3時ぐらいに閉まっちゃう。だから日本人としたら、今からコーヒー飲むのに、どこもコーヒー飲めないみたいな。
He got a culture shock first time he was in Melbourne. He was like, oh, 3 o'clock? It's time to have some coffee, man. Let's go.
Yeah.
Go to a cafe and everything's shut. He was like, what is this? He's like, this is when Japanese people drink coffee. Why y'all closing, man?
Yeah.
So you got like a huge culture shock, but that's what a lot of the West is about, right? We rely on coffee in the morning. We want it like hot and fast, you know, 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, a lot of places shut down like 3, 5, right? These guys are getting started at that time.
Wow. That's all so interesting. I was wondering about that when it came to Weekenders was opens at I think 7 a.m. I believe, and so that was the spot that I hung out at probably the most whenever I was in Kyoto. Not only because I loved it, because I did love it, but also because they were open, you know, so early, and so I was able to go by and get my coffee fix if I didn't stop by a convenience store or anything. Masa, one thing we're really curious about, speaking of tourists and speaking of tourism specifically in Kyoto even, when I was in Kyoto, it felt like, I mean, there was just so many tourists around me. I was one of them, obviously, but there were so many tourists there in Kyoto, which can be great. It could be a negative, it could be a positive, I'm sure. But how has tourism impacted your business at Weekenders? Has it impacted it positively? Tell us about your experience with that.
本当に、まあ、なんていうかな。時期もあって、その欧米の人が多い時期もあるし、アジアンが多い時もあるし、まあそれが入れ替わり、なんつうのかな。ちょうどうまい具合に回転してるような感じで、一年中、その桜のシーズンと、イースターが被ったりとか、一年中京都っていうのは、その辺では、まあビジネス的にはすごい有利なのかなっていうのは思います。
So he's saying that it's definitely like a seasonal thing, especially around sakura seasons. You start to get, you know, European, Western guys, gals coming through. And then once that kind of fades out, the Asian wave comes through.
Okay.
So you have this cycle of tourists that kind of flood in during that period. In terms of business, is definitely something that's been very fortunate on his end.
まあ一応うちのスタッフは今、台湾の子が2人と、あと韓国の出身の子もいるし、だからこうインターナショナルな感じでやってるので、この辺は大丈夫かな。だからこう、中国語を喋れないですけど、聞き取りはできるようになります。
So he has now on staff. So definitely the biggest challenge is the influx of customers. You might have too many people in the shop at some points, but luckily for him, he's kind of put in that effort. He's hired 2 people from Taiwan. He got someone from Korea, and so he kind of has a lot of the common languages, you know, covered. And it's to a point where, you know, there's so many foreign languages going around in the cafe that even him, like, he's able to kind of pick up on some languages, you know? So I think it's a benefit for him, definitely. He's lucky that he kind of set everything in place to handle the international influx.
Wow. We Masa, we had discovered Weekenders via social media. You know, that was how we first came across Weekenders, and we were able to get in touch and taste some of your coffee, and I still remember first having your coffee and being just as impressed as I was, and just immediately considering, you know, Weekenders just a roaster that I really, really, really loved. And and I've always thought that way. But we came across Weekenders via social media, and there's just a vast platform in many ways for people to become exposed to different companies that are on the other side of the world today. How has that impacted your business? Because when we first met, I'm curious, are we the first subscription company here in the United States that featured Weekenders? And also, like, have you seen just social media take you to take your business to be in front of other people beyond that?
まあ、うちからその発信をしてるってことはあまりなくて、まあその、本当に、ね、その、僕たちが若い頃っていうのは雑誌を見て、こうお店を探してっていう時代から、やっぱもう変わってきてますよね。もうみんな勝手に宣伝してくれるみたいなところがあって。だからその、富野小路のショップを作ることで、やっぱそれが可能になったのかなっていうのはありますね。その看板もちっちゃいけども、もう建物自体での、そのインパクトを与えることができたのかなって。まあ、お店のスペースもめちゃめちゃちっちゃいけど、でもその効果っていうのはやっぱ、ね、その SNS で発信してもらった方が、お客さんは来るようになるのでいいのかなと思うんですけど、まあ、行き過ぎたところがあると困るかす。その写真だけ目的で加える場合も時々あるので。
He definitely thinks that because of social media and I guess the awareness that they've kind of garnered throughout the past few years has allowed them or enabled them to open up that new shop. And showcasing that shop is kind of this iconic thing now on social media. When you Google cafes in Kyoto, you're always going to see Weekenders, and it's kind of a thing now. And it's almost to a point where it's like it kind of advertises itself. You know, they're not out there trying to like push, you know, and go viral or do all this stuff. It kind of works kind of automatically. So it's definitely something that has helped them in their business and allowed them to kind of spread out.
Yeah.
In terms of their international sales, let me ask them.
いや、まあ、スポットである感じですかね。オランダのサブスクのやつとかも送ったこともありますし。うん。まあ、でもレギュラーでやってることはないです。オンラインは、国内だけですね。うちの発送っていうのは。で、ホールセールだけ、インターナショナルでやってます。
Yeah, so it's not like they really haven't done a lot of like wholesale like or subscriptions one service in Holland. So you know, it's
Coffee
mainly
Vine, probably, right?
Yeah, it's mainly their international is mainly based off of wholesale.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Ray, you had some questions about like some generational coffee things in Japan. Some things that you were familiar with and some things that you had observed. Do you want to share with the listener and also with Masa maybe what those things were and some questions you had around that?
いや、どっちにも入ってないような。ね、その、フォアオーバーっていうのは昔、日本の喫茶文化で、まあ、なんつうの、独自に発展してきて、でそれがアメリカに行って、で、ポアオーバーっていうドリップからポアオーバーに変わって、日本にまた戻ってきてっていう感じなんで、まあでも、なんだ。ね、できてる液体は一緒のコーヒーなんで。うん。どうだろう。サードウェーブっていう言葉自体がやっぱこう、一人歩きしちゃったっていうのもありますよね、日本で。朝入りイコールサードウェーブみたいな捉え方をしてる人が結構多くて。でもサードウェーブってやっぱね、そもそも、トレーサビリティとかそういう部分であったはずなのに、それがなんかちょっと認識がずれちゃってるのかなとは思いますけどね。ここって、だからうちの店にお客さんが来て、ここってサードウェーブですよねっていう言われたこともあるけど、でもサードウェーブかなうちはって思ってしまうことも、思いますね。そのやっぱ、まあ、僕たちの世代 っていうのは、まあ、サードウェーブっていう言葉自体はもう認識はないような気がします。その浅入り深入りっていう概念もなくて、この豆に対して適切な焙煎ってどういう感じなんやろっていう風な考え方に変わってきてるのかな。だからまあ僕らが焙煎し始めた時っていうのは、できるだけ浅く焼くみたいな、浅く焼くっていう行為にやったのかなって思いますね。だから全然今の考え方とはちょっと違う、変わってきてるような気がします。
Well, I asked him if he sees himself in the vein of traditional Japanese coffee culture or coffee businesses, kind of evolved into this modern state, or does he see himself kind of included in this third wave movement? And he definitely knows that, you know, in Japan, like the term third wave coffee is recognized and understood, but it's kind of misunderstood in a way that in Japan, a lot of the people who adopted the terminology of third wave coffee kind of saw it as it's equal to just serving light roast coffee. And that's something that he feels shouldn't be the case.
Okay.
This current wave of coffee should be more about traceability and understanding how to roast the coffee and treat the coffee in a way that best showcases its unique character.
Yeah.
Rather than just being light or dark.
Yeah.
And when he started off, it was kind of his ideology was to roast light. That was his thing, his focus. But now, like into the current era, it's not really, specialty coffee isn't really just about light roast. It's just about getting great coffees with traceability and treating them in a way that is going to make them special. It's going to kind of give the most character out of that green as possible.
Wow.
So he doesn't really recognize that third wave type of definition.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Ray, did you have any other follow-up questions with that? Or if not, I'm just curious where Japanese specialty coffee is going to go from here.
まあ、みんなやっぱこう、産地に行くようになって、やっぱ今までは、なんだ、まあ、カップオブエクセレンスとか、そういうオークションものに強かったのが日本のイメージやったんですけど、今ちょっとずつこう、若い人たちも生産地に行くようになって、やっぱこう、しっかりとした取引ができるコーヒーっていうのが残っていくんじゃないかな、とは思いますね。ただまあいわゆるインフューズドじゃないですけど、アナエロビックとか、そういう方向に行っちゃってる人もいるけど、結局のところ、もうちょっと普通に飲めるコーヒーが、これから残っていくんじゃないかなとは思いますね。
So he says that one thing that he hopes is that this honest and serious trade relationship between producers and the Japanese coffee businesses continues to flourish. There's a lot of people going to Origin now and actually participating in Cup of Excellences and getting to know farmers in a person to person relations. He sees that being something that will continue to flourish and strengthen between Japan and the producing countries. So that's something he hopes that will continue. One thing that he feels he hopes is that, we see kind of more focus on traditional processes and not these experimental anaerobics and all that. So that's something that he kind of sees happening is shifting back towards just the cleaner, more traditional styles of processing.
I think so.
その日本の特徴やと思うんです。やっぱこうマイクロロースターが多い。やっぱアメリカだとこう規模が大きいじゃん。こう買うことができるロットっていうのが、やっぱ日本ってすごい、ラッキーなことにあんまりこう、各ロースターがそこまで量を必要としないので、だからよりマイクロロットが日本は買いやすいのかな。 アメリカのロースターとかと比べると、日本っていうのは、そういう意味では、クオリティを高く保ってるのかなとは思います。
So because the volume that they purchase and they actually serve is so much lower than other countries, they have a business system where they can actually focus just on micro lots and smaller, more specialty like lots that are focused on higher quality scoring, because they don't really need to buy large bulk or large volume like from other countries. So that's something special about Japan, is that because there's so many micro roasters who've kind of built out their customer base and their businesses around purchasing small, exquisite lots and being able to kind of serve and make a business out of just serving high quality. So that's something that he feels is a benefit for basically the landscape they have out there, which is started from micro roasting and continues on to serve communities with these kind of cherry picked and smaller lots of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we typically have to buy a lot or whatever to serve a certain kind of the customer. Maybe we'll have a couple micro lots or a couple rarities here and there, but because of the volume out in the U.S., it's almost mandatory to just kind of double, triple up what they have in Japan.
Totally.
So yeah, it's a great thing.
Customer expectations and everything too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Masa, thank you so much for coming on. This is a big year for Weekenders, as it's the 20th anniversary of Weekenders. And yes, absolutely. Congratulations for that. You are releasing a collaboration box set commemorating your 20th year. Can you tell us about this? Tell us about what's going on with that.
これは、うちが20年までの間に、出会った日本のロースターの方々に、ウィーケンダーズが買い付けしている豆を、焙煎していただいて、で、言ったらなんですか、うちのショーケースでもあるわけですよね。今、手元に、都合よく30ロットぐらい、あったので、それを各ロースターに、割り当てて、僕が各ロースターに焼いてほしいなっていう豆をセレクトして、それをもう焙煎してもらって、30ロースター、各 15g を一つのボックスにして販売します。
So to commemorate their 20 years, he's kind of assembled a list of 30 roasters that he's kind of developed relationships with, friendships with, and he's picked 30 different lots for each of these roasters to roast.
Wow.
To showcase kind of what Weekenders has in terms of green. And then offering all that in a box set of 30 15-gram pouches from 30 of his closest roaster partners or friends. So
that's fun.
It sounds like an insane insane Christmas gift if you're out in Japan.
It does. Masa, are you shipping these internationally? Can people purchase these internationally?
いや、海外も今回は発送しようかと思ってるんですけど、はい。
Even international for this product is available.
Wow. So I'm assuming you can just go on to Weekender's website and get that. We will maybe put a link in the show notes to Weekender's website. And is this box set available right now, or when is it going to go live?
今、オーダーを受け付けてて、11月23日までの、オーダーを発送するっていう形なんで。
So he's taking pre-orders right now, and they will be fulfilled November 23rd.
Amazing. So you can go in the show notes. This is a great Christmas gift. And if you have a friend who loves coffee and maybe a friend who hasn't had a chance to try Weekenders yet, and you know they should because you just heard Masa talk on this podcast because he's a genius, you should go and pick up that box right now. Go ahead and do it and pick it up. You're not going to regret it. Masa, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an
は
honor
い。
to have you,
はい。
and we're super blessed to be able to just glean a little bit of information from you. So thank you again, Masa.
Yo, I have one more question. すいません。もう一つ質問あるんですけど、去年ですかね、ノマとのコラボレーションがあったんですけど、それってどういうコラボレーションだったんですか？
まあ、ノマの京都のポップアップが、去年が2回、その前の年も、ノマで提供するコーヒーをうちで、焙煎をしていて。そのイベントちゃうか。あ、キャロラインと一緒なんで。で、まあ、その中で、まあ、ノマも自分たちでコーヒーのブランドを立ち上げて、ノマカフェっていうブランドを立ち上げたので、それの、なんだ、ローンチみたいな感じで、うちの焙煎所でコラボイベントをしました。
Noma has done a couple pop-ups in Kyoto, and they were chosen to take part in roasting their Noma's coffee brand, this Noma Cafe. So, yeah, that was definitely an honor for them.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's awesome. Awesome.
いえいえ。Thank you
Masa,
so much.
thank you so much, man. It's really great to be able to talk to you again. Hopefully we get to see each other soon.
どうもお時間をいただいてありがとうございます。